The Trump regime has launched a sweeping and controversial overhaul of the US State Department's methodology for compiling its annual report on global human rights abuses. This move introduces a foreign policy agenda firmly rooted in far-right Christian nationalism, redefining key areas like diversity, equity and inclusion, reproductive health and migration as potential human rights infringements. New instructions to US embassies and consulates directs officials to document a range of specific policies in foreign nations that align with the regime's stated goals of stopping destructive ideologies. The shift abandons the long-standing bipartisan focus on promoting universal democratic principles and human rights as traditionally understood, and replacing it with a selective emphasis that critics argue is designed to serve partisan political goals. A senior State Department official defended the reorientation as a tool to change the behavior of governments, claiming that rights are given to us by God, our Creator, not by governments, echoing a Christian fundamentalist view of human rights that prioritizes certain values over internationally recognized social and economic rights. The new criteria requires US officials to report on several categories previously not considered human rights abuses or even actively supported by previous administrations. These include foreign governments enforcing DEI policies that provide preferential treatment to workers based on race, sex, or caste, a direct extension of the regime's aggressive domestic efforts to terminate DEI programs. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Tommy Pigott explicitly stated the administration will not allow racially discriminatory employment practices to go unchecked. The rules also target the subsidization of abortions or abortion-related drugs, as well as compiling the total estimated number of annual abortions. Furthermore, officials are mandated to report on gender transition surgery for children, defined by the State Department as operations involving chemical or surgical mutilation to modify their sex, with Pigott citing the need to stop the mutilation of children. The facilitation of mass or illegal migration across a country's territory is also included as an area of concern, and arrests or official investigations or warnings for speech are to be categorized as infringing on free speech, a direct attack on online hate speech and harm reduction laws adopted by democratic nations in Europe. Pigott concluded that these instructions are intended to stop new destructive ideologies that have been given safe harbor to human rights violations. This rephrasing of the narrative has been met with intense fire from rights campaigners and former diplomats. Critics charge that the regime is weaponizing international human rights for domestic partisan ends and redefining long-established human rights principles to pursue an ideological agenda. Uzra Zeya, a former State Department official who now leads the charity Human Rights First, called the attempt to label DEI as a human rights violation as a new low, noting the instructions conveyed jaw-dropping animosity towards LGBTQ+ people. She argues that the new instructions deliberately marginalize the rights of vulnerable groups, effectively excluding women, LGBTQ+ persons, religious and ethnic minorities, and non-believers whose rights are guaranteed under existing international law. The exclusion of long-documented issues like gender-based violence and government corruption has severely diminished the report's comprehensiveness and historic credibility. Indeed, recently Donald Trump suggested that offenses that take place in the home should not count against his record of crime reduction in Washington, saying his opponents are using reports of a little fight with the wife to undermine his crackdown. Trump's downplaying of domestic violence leans directly into this mindset that human rights, and certainly the rights of women, are in some way stifling the success of men. Beyond simply altering the focus on traditional human rights concerns, the Trump regime has been actively creating diplomatic friction with close democratic allies by weaponizing the Human Rights Report for ideological ends. The report, which has historically been seen as the most comprehensive study of its kind, was significantly rewritten and downscaled, softening criticism of some US partners while simultaneously escalating disapproval of perceived foes. Critically, the report declared that the human rights situation had worsened in countries like the UK, France, and Germany, specifically citing their regulations on online hate speech as problematic restrictions on free expression. You know that moment when you suddenly realize it's December 23rd, the shelves are empty, and you still haven't found a gift for that impossible person on your list? Yeah, well, I've lived that life too, more than once. My panic-buying Christmas Eve sprint is practically a holiday tradition. But this year, I finally found the last-minute lifesaver. Aura frames. For me, the person I can never shop for is my stepdad. He always says he doesn't need anything, which is code for good luck, so he's getting an Aura frame from me this year. And honestly, it's perfect. I've already preloaded it with old family photos, a couple of embarrassing childhood pictures, and even some videos. The cool part is I can keep adding more from anywhere, anytime, and it just shows up on his frame like magic. And setting it up, stupidly easy. You just download the Aura app, connect it to Wi-Fi, and you can upload unlimited photos and videos. Plus, every frame comes in this really clean, premium gift box, so even if you're a procrastinator like me, it still feels like you planned ahead. Because you can't wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get 35% off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code 5MIN at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code 5MIN. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. This language aligns the US government with the political stance of some US tech executives and the regime's opposition to digital governance laws in Europe, effectively using a foreign policy tool to advance domestic political battles and portraying traditional democratic partners as being in human rights decline. This politically driven approach is further evidenced by the selective application of criticism. The regime's significantly rewritten human rights report noticeably softened criticism of close partners like Israel and El Salvador, while ramping up disapproval of nations like Brazil and South Africa, with whom Washington has clashed on other issues. This pattern of minimizing abuses in politically favorable countries and inflating criticisms of democratic allies, whose laws conflict with the regime's domestic agenda, signals a complete shift away from the traditional US role as a neutral and objective promoter of universal human rights. The historic Human Rights Report, once a vital document for informing policy, is now seen by critics as a tool for rewarding political allies and punishing ideological foes. This selective focus risks weakening the global human rights framework and emboldening authoritarian regimes by demonstrating that the US is willing to trade universal principles for equality with dictators and repressed societies around the world. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.